You can take the guest room or move out. Great if you're out by the weekend." My daughter-in-law said it with a smile, a bright, cheerful smile, like she was offering me a cup of tea instead of an eviction notice. I was standing in the kitchen I'd cleaned for 8 years, in the house I'd contributed $180,000 to buy, and she was telling me I had 5 days to disappear. My name is Gwendolyn Ortega. I'm 62 years old, and for nearly a decade, I let myself become invisible in my own son's home, until the day I decided to stop. She didn't know about the contract in my safety deposit box, or about the phone call I would receive 3 days later, the one that changed everything. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. This is the story of how I stopped being invisible. Let me paint you a picture of my typical day in that house. I woke up at 6 every morning. Not because I wanted to, but because someone had to make sure David and Lily had breakfast before school. Vanessa, my daughter-in-law, called herself a content creator. Her job, apparently, required sleeping until 9 and spending 3 hours on hair and makeup before she could face a camera. So I cooked, I packed lunches, I drove the kids to Jefferson Academy by 7:45, then picked them up at 3:15 sharp, because Vanessa once left me a note that said, "The kids need to be picked up by 3:15, not 3:30. Their after-school enrichment schedule is non-negotiable." Not a please, not a thank you, just instructions, like I was the hired help. I told myself it was worth it. I got to see my grandchildren every day. I got to watch David grow into a thoughtful teenager and Lily bloom into a curious little girl. That had to count for something. But there were signs, small ones at first, like the time Vanessa's college friend visited from Seattle. They were sitting in the living room when I brought out coffee, and Vanessa gestured toward me with a dismissive wave. "This is Marcus's mother. She helps out around here. Not lives with us. Not this is Gwen, she's family. Helps out." I smiled and set down the tray. What else could I do? Here's what Vanessa didn't know. What I never told anyone in that house. I had contributed $180,000 toward the purchase of that home in 2016. 60% of the $300,000 price tag. My late husband's life insurance invested in my son's future. I wasn't a guest. I was a co-owner. But somewhere along the way, everyone forgot that, including me. The second sign came 2 weeks before everything fell apart. Lily was turning 10, and I wanted to throw her a birthday party at the house. Nothing extravagant, just balloons, a homemade cake, maybe a few friends from her class. I'd been planning the menu in my head for days, her favorite lemon cupcakes, those little finger sandwiches she loved. I brought it up at dinner, keeping my voice light. "I was thinking we could celebrate Lily's birthday here this year. I could handle all the cooking and decorations." Vanessa didn't even look up from her phone. "That doesn't really work for us." "Oh? Why not?" "The aesthetic, Gwen. I'm shooting a home tour for my channel next week. I can't have balloon residue on the walls or cake crumbs in the carpet." Balloon residue for a 10-year-old's birthday party. I glanced at Marcus, waiting for him to say something. My son, the boy I'd raised alone after his father died, the man I'd supported through college and his first apartment and his wedding, just stared at his plate. "Mom, let's not make this a big deal," he murmured. That was it. That was all he had to say. I still had friends in that world, the world of influence and connections that Vanessa was so desperate to enter. People who remembered me from my 30 years as a landscape architect, who had commissioned me for projects worth millions. But Vanessa never asked about my past. She saw a 62-year-old woman in comfortable shoes, and she decided that was all there was to see. I could have corrected her. I could have pulled out my portfolio, shown her the magazine features, the award ceremonies. But what would have been the point? She'd already made up her mind about who I was. To understand what happened next, you need to understand what Vanessa wanted. At 34, she had 89,000 followers on Instagram and a dream of becoming what she called a luxury lifestyle influencer. She posted photos of expensive coffee and designer handbags, most of them borrowed or bought on credit, and spent hours studying the accounts of women who actually lived that life. But there was a ceiling she couldn't break through. The real luxury market in Denver wasn't about filters and hashtags. It was about old money, private clubs, and invitation-only events where deals were made over champagne instead of DMs. The Colorado Landscape Architecture Association was exactly the kind of organization Vanessa coveted. Its members included the owners of some of the most stunning estates in the state, people with 15,000-square-foot homes and gardens that cost more than most people's houses. Every year, they held an annual gala that attracted CEOs, developers, and socialites. Vanessa had tried to get invited 3 times. 3 times, she'd been rejected. "They're so exclusive," she complained to a friend on the phone one evening, not realizing I could hear from the hallway. "They won't even respond to my collaboration requests. Do they not understand brand synergy?" I said nothing, because what I didn't tell her, what she never thought to ask, was that I'd been a member of that organization for 28 years. My friend Marjorie had been asking me to attend their gala for the past 5 years, and I'd always declined. "You should come," Marjorie would say. "People still remember your work, Gwen. The Henderson Estate Gardens, the Mercer Building courtyards, those projects put Colorado landscape design on the map." But I didn't want to impose. I didn't want to be seen as clinging to past glories. At least that's what I told myself. My room was the smallest in the house. It had been the home office before I moved in, just big enough for a twin bed, a narrow dresser, and a single window that looked out onto the neighbor's fence. The closet was so shallow that I had to keep half my clothes in plastic bins under the bed. On the dresser, I kept 2 things: a framed photo of my late husband, Richard, and a small box containing my professional awards. The ASLA Honor Award from 2009, the Colorado Design Excellence Medal. A letter from Thomas Mercer, thanking me for transforming his company headquarters into a space that inspires everyone who walks through the doors. Vanessa had never seen inside that box. Neither had Marcus, not for years. I ate dinner alone most nights. Not because anyone told me to, but because by the time I finished cooking and serving everyone else, the family had usually moved on to their own activities. So I'd sit in the kitchen, listening to the sounds of the TV in the other room, eating leftovers off a plate I'd washed myself. One evening, David came downstairs and found me there. "Grandma?" He slid into the chair across from me, his backpack still on. "Why don't you ever tell them about your awards?" I looked at this 14-year-old boy, already taller than me, with his father's eyes and his grandfather's stubborn jawline, and I felt something crack in my chest. "Some things don't need to be said, sweetheart. People see what they want to see." He frowned, unconvinced, but he stayed with me until I finished eating. I didn't know it then, but in exactly 17 days, Vanessa would finally see. And she wouldn't be able to unsee it. The doorbell rang at 6:47 on a Tuesday evening. I was in the kitchen, finishing the dishes from dinner, when I heard Vanessa's squeal of delight from the foyer. By the time I dried my hands and walked out, the living room had transformed into a chaos of luggage and embraces. Patricia Kensington stood in the center of it all. Vanessa's mother, a woman I'd met exactly 4 times in 8 years. She was 64, with professionally styled silver hair and the kind of posture that suggested she'd spent her life expecting to be served. Behind her stood her sister Susan and brother-in-law Frank, looking around the house with the appraising eyes of people already calculating square footage. 3 large suitcases blocked the hallway. 2 carry-ons sat by the stairs. "Surprise!" Vanessa was practically glowing. "Mom's going to stay with us for a while, and Aunt Susan and Uncle Frank too, just until they figure out their living situation in Arizona." A while turned out to mean a few months, maybe until spring. Nobody asked my opinion. Nobody even looked at me. Patricia surveyed the room with a slight frown. "It's smaller than I remembered, Vanessa. Where exactly am I sleeping?" "Don't worry, Mom. We're going to figure out the room situation tonight." That was when Marcus finally caught my eye. He had the decency to look uncomfortable, at least, but he said nothing. He just gave me a small, helpless shrug, as if the tidal wave of his mother-in-law was simply a force of nature beyond anyone's control. I felt a chill run down my spine. Room situation. I knew exactly whose room they were going to figure out. Vanessa found me on the back porch 30 minutes later. The sun had set, and the air had that crisp Colorado chill that always reminded me of Richard. I was sitting on the bench he'd built for our old house, one of the few things I'd brought with me when I moved in with Marcus. "Mom, we need to talk about room arrangements," Vanessa said, sliding the glass door closed behind her. She was still smiling. That was the part that stayed with me, the smile, as if what she was about to say was perfectly reasonable. "You can take the guest room downstairs, or move out." She tilted her head. "Great if you're out by the weekend." I stared at her. The guest room downstairs wasn't a guest room. It was a converted storage space, 8 feet by 10, no windows, a bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. We'd used it to store holiday decorations before Vanessa decided she wanted a minimalist aesthetic and threw most of them away. That's a closet, Vanessa. It's a room. We can put a mattress in there. It'll be cozy." "And where would my furniture go? My things?" She waved a hand. "We'll figure it out. Storage unit, maybe. The important thing is that my mother needs a proper bedroom. She has back problems." I looked through the glass door. Inside, I could see Marcus laughing at something Patricia said. He didn't glance outside. Not once. "Does Marcus agree with this?" Vanessa's smile didn't waver. "Marcus and I discussed it. This is what's best for everyone." Something shifted inside me then, something that had been holding on for 8 years, gripping tight to hope and denial and the desperate need to keep the peace. It finally let go. That night, I sat on my bed and made a list. Not on paper, just in my head, the way I used to plan garden layouts before putting pencil to drafting board. I listed everything I would lose if I simply packed my bags and left. I would lose daily access to David and Lily. Vanessa would make sure of that. She'd frame my departure as abandonment, as proof that I didn't really care about the grandchildren I'd helped raise. I would lose financial stability. My pension and Social Security came to about $2,800 a month. In Denver's housing market, that meant a studio apartment in a questionable neighborhood, if I was lucky. I would lose my dignity. I would leave this house exactly the way Vanessa saw me, a burden, a charity case, someone whose presence was tolerated rather than valued. But then I opened the bottom drawer of my dresser, the one nobody ever looked in, and pulled out a manila envelope. Inside was a contract dated August 15th, 2016. The agreement Marcus and I had signed when I contributed $180,000 toward the down payment on this house. I'd insisted on having it notarized, even though Marcus had said it wasn't necessary. "We're family, Mom. We don't need lawyers." But I'd had Richard's voice in my head that day. Richard, who always said, "Love your family, Gwen, but document everything." I flipped to page 3, paragraph 7, subsection B. Co-contributor Gwendolyn Ortega retains permanent residency rights and must be consulted on any major household decisions involving third-party occupancy exceeding 30 days. I read it twice. Then I put it back in the envelope. My phone buzzed. Caller ID, Marjorie Williams. I didn't answer. But when I called back the next morning, everything changed. Marjorie picked up on the second ring. "Gwen, I was starting to think you were avoiding me." Her voice was warm, familiar, the voice of a friend who'd known me since before Richard died, before I became invisible. "Did you get my message?" "I did. I'm sorry I didn't call back last night. It's been a complicated few days." "Well, I'm calling with good news. The board voted last week, and it was unanimous." She paused, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "We're giving you the Legacy Award this year." I sat down slowly on the edge of my bed. The Legacy Award was the highest honor the Colorado Landscape Architecture Association could bestow. It wasn't given for a single project, but for a lifetime of contribution to the field. Past recipients included people who had literally reshaped the way Colorado thought about outdoor spaces. "Marjorie, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll accept it. The gala is in 12 days, Saturday the 19th, 7 p.m. at the Crawford Hotel. 350 guests, black tie, and you, my dear, will be the guest of honor." I thought about the storage closet Vanessa wanted me to move into. I thought about the way Patricia had looked around the house like she was already rearranging the furniture. I thought about Marcus, who couldn't even meet my eyes. "I'll think about it," I said. "You've been hiding too long, Gwen. It's time people remember who designed half the signature gardens in this city." After we hung up, I sat there for a long moment, holding the phone. The Crawford Hotel. 350 guests. The exact event Vanessa had been begging to attend for years. I opened my laptop and started to plan. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I made decisions for myself. First, I scanned the 2016 contract and emailed it to Bernard Hoffman, an attorney who'd been a close friend of Richard's. His reply came within the hour. "This looks straightforward. Call me when you can." Then I opened Zillow and searched for apartments in Cherry Creek, a neighborhood I'd always loved, close to the botanical gardens, walkable to coffee shops and bookstores, the kind of place Richard and I had talked about retiring to before he got sick. A 2-bedroom condo caught my eye. 1,200 square feet, modern kitchen, a small balcony overlooking a courtyard garden, $2,100 a month. With my pension and savings, I could afford it. Not comfortably, but I could afford it. I scheduled a viewing for the following afternoon. The entire time, a thought kept circling through my mind. I wasn't running away. I was choosing to leave on my own terms. There was a difference. That afternoon, while Vanessa was filming content and Patricia was napping off her jet lag, I slipped out of the house. The leasing agent, a cheerful woman named Sandra, met me at the condo. "It's available immediately," she said, unlocking the door. "Previous tenant just relocated to Seattle." I walked through the empty rooms, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. The afternoon light poured through the windows, warm and golden. For the first time in months, I felt something loosen in my chest. I could picture my grandmother's quilt on that bed, Richard's photo on that windowsill, my drafting table, the one currently buried in the garage, right there by the window. "I'll take it," I said. "Move-in date, the Sunday after next." 3 days after Patricia's arrival, she was sleeping in my bed. I'd moved my things into the storage room, what Vanessa now cheerfully called your cozy space, without argument. Let them think I'd surrendered. Let them think they'd won. It made what was coming that much easier. But Patricia, it seemed, wasn't satisfied. "This mattress is ancient," she announced at breakfast, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I barely slept. My back is absolutely wrecked." Vanessa nodded sympathetically. "We'll get you a new one, Mom. Memory foam, top of the line." "Who's paying for that?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. The table went quiet. Vanessa's smile flickered. "Well, I assumed—" "You assumed I would?" I set down my fork. "I don't recall agreeing to that." Patricia's eyebrows rose. "Is there a problem?" "Not at all." I met her gaze steadily. "I'm just clarifying who's paying." "Mom," Marcus's voice was strained. "This isn't the time." "It's exactly the time," I said. "I've been paying for things in this house for 8 years without anyone asking or thanking. If we're adding new furniture for guests, I'd like to know what the expectation is." The silence stretched. Vanessa's cheeks flushed pink. Patricia looked at me like I'd grown a second head. Finally, Marcus cleared his throat. "Mom, please, can we just keep the peace?" I looked at my son, really looked at him, at the man who'd watched his wife dismiss me for years and never said a word. "I've been keeping the peace for 8 years, Marcus. Where has it gotten me?" He didn't have an answer for that. I excused myself and returned to my cozy space where I could hear them whispering in urgent voices through the thin walls. That evening, I heard something I wasn't meant to hear. I was passing through the upstairs hallway when Vanessa's voice drifted out from the master bedroom. She was on the phone, speaker off, but talking loudly enough that every word was clear. "My mother-in-law? Oh, she's basically the housekeeper. Doesn't really have anywhere else to go, so she stays." A tinkling laugh. "It's charity, honestly." I stopped walking. "But anyway," Vanessa continued, "I'm still working on getting into the CLAA gala. You know, the one with all the luxury real estate people. Their VP just ghosted my last email. So frustrating. I'd kill for an invitation." I stood there, hand on the wall, barely breathing. Charity. She called it charity, when I had paid for 60% of the roof over her head, when I had spent 8 years cooking her meals, cleaning her house, raising her children so she could film herself drinking lattes. Charity. I walked to my storage room and closed the door. Then I sat on the narrow cot they'd moved in for me and made 2 decisions. First, I would attend the gala. I would accept the Legacy Award in front of 350 people, including every person Vanessa desperately wanted to impress. Second, I would not tell a single person in this house until the moment I walked out that door. Let them think I was defeated. Let them imagine me shuffling off to some sad little apartment, alone and irrelevant. The truth would come out soon enough. On Vanessa's territory, in front of her coveted audience, in a room she'd begged to enter. I picked up my phone and texted Marjorie. "I'm in. Save me a seat at the table." Her reply came instantly. "Front and center, darling, right where you belong." Okay, I have to pause here for a moment. If you've ever been treated like you don't matter by the very people you've sacrificed for, I see you, I really do. Let me ask you, what would you do in this situation? Would you walk away quietly, or would you wait for the right moment? Drop your answer in the comments. And if this story is hitting home, please hit that subscribe button. Now, let's continue. Bernard Hoffman's office smelled like old books and lemon furniture polish. I sat across from his mahogany desk, watching him flip through the contract I'd brought. He was 68 now, his hair completely white, but his eyes were as sharp as ever. "Richard always said you were the practical one," he murmured, adjusting his reading glasses. He was right. Is it valid? Completely. He tapped the page. Notarized, properly witnessed, filed with the county. Clause 7B is especially clear. You retain permanent residency rights, and any major household decision involving long-term guests requires your consultation. He looked up at me. Has anyone consulted you about these guests? No. Then they're in breach. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. What are my options? Bernard pulled out a legal pad. Option 1. You assert your rights and stay. They'd have to accommodate you. He paused. Though I suspect that would make for an unpleasant living situation. You suspect correctly. Option 2. Buy out. According to Zillow, that house is now worth approximately $580,000. Your 60% contribution at purchase, adjusted for equity, means you're entitled to roughly $348,000 if they want you out. $348,000. Enough to buy a condo outright. Enough to never worry about rent again. I can prepare a formal demand letter, Bernard continued, but I'll wait for your signal. When do you want me to send it? I thought about the gala, about Vanessa's face when she realized who I was, about the 12 days standing between now and that moment. Not yet, I said. I'll let you know. He nodded and handed me a folder, copies of everything, with the key clause highlighted in yellow. When you're ready, Gwen, I'll be here. I met Marjorie for coffee the next afternoon at a quiet cafe in Lodo. She looked exactly as I remembered. Elegant, silver-haired, with the kind of effortless grace that came from decades of confidence. When she saw me, she stood up and pulled me into a hug so tight it almost hurt. You look good, Gwen. Tired, but good. It's been a long few years. We settled into our seats, and I gave her an abbreviated version of my situation. The house, the contract, the daughter-in-law who thought I was the help. Marjorie's expression shifted from concern to barely contained fury. That woman, she said carefully, has emailed our organization 4 times requesting a gala invitation. The last one was just last week. I've turned her down every time. I know. Did you know she's your daughter-in-law when you declined all those times? I suspected. She mentioned the organization once or twice. Marjorie shook her head slowly. And you never said anything, never leveraged your connections, never pointed out that the woman begging for access was living in a house you paid for. That's not who I am. I know. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. but maybe it's time to show them who you actually are." She slid an envelope across the table, heavy cream cardstock embossed with gold. I opened it and saw my name printed in elegant script, honoring Gwendolyn Ortega, 2024 Legacy Award recipient. "Saturday the 19th, Marjorie said. 7 p.m., the Crawford Hotel. I've arranged for a car to pick you up at 6:30. I ran my finger over the lettering, feeling the weight of 30 years of work pressing against my chest. "She'll be devastated," I said quietly, "when she finds out." Marjorie's smile was serene. "Yes, I imagine she will." On Thursday afternoon, I signed the lease for the Cherry Creek condo. Sandra had saved me a parking spot and expedited the paperwork. Move-in date, Sunday, the 20th, the day after the gala. First month's rent plus security deposit, $4,200, a small price for independence. Afterward, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went shopping for myself. At Nordstrom, a sales associate named Michelle helped me find a gown. We must have tried on a dozen dresses before I saw it, a floor-length sheath in midnight blue, simple but elegant, with a subtle shimmer that caught the light when I moved. "That's the one," Michelle said, watching me in the three-way mirror. The price tag read $890, more than I'd spent on myself in the past 5 years combined. "I'll take it," I said. Standing in that fitting room, I saw myself for the first time in longer than I could remember. Not Marcus's mother, not the help, not the woman who ate dinner alone in the kitchen while everyone else moved on without her. I was Gwendolyn Ortega. I had designed the courtyards of 3 buildings nominated for National Design Awards. I had transformed barren lots into spaces where families celebrated anniversaries and children learned to love nature. I had done work that would outlast me by generations, and I had let myself forget all of it. That evening, David texted me, "Grandma, are you okay? You seem different lately, in a good way." I smiled at my phone and typed back, "I'm more okay than I've been in years, sweetheart." 2 days until the gala, and still, no one in that house knew I was leaving, or where I was going. On Thursday night, Vanessa gathered everyone for a family dinner. The table was fuller than it had been in years. Marcus at the head, Vanessa beside him, Patricia in what used to be my chair. Susan and Frank sat across from David and Lily, who kept glancing at me with uncertain expressions. I was at the far end, closest to the kitchen door. Vanessa clinked her glass with a spoon as if she were making a toast. "I just want to say how grateful we are to have everyone together," she began, smiling at her mother. "This house is finally feeling like a real home, with real family around." I felt the slight land, even if no one else did. "And Mom Gwen," Vanessa continued, turning to me with that bright, practiced smile, "we're so appreciative of everything you've done to help out over the years, but we all agree it might be time for you to find your own space. Independent living would be good for you." The table went quiet. Patricia nodded sagely. "At her age," Patricia added, "it's healthier to be around people her own level." I stared at them, at Vanessa's serene confidence, at Patricia's casual cruelty, at Marcus studying his plate like it held the secrets of the universe. Then David spoke. "Grandma's not a burden." His voice was tight, adolescent, breaking with emotion. "She's the only one who actually takes care of us." "David, that's enough," Vanessa snapped. But something in me had shifted. I set down my fork very carefully and looked at my daughter-in-law. "You're right, Vanessa. I should find my own space." I paused. "In fact, I already have." Vanessa's smile froze. "What?" "I signed a lease yesterday. I move out Sunday." "Well, good." She recovered quickly. "I'm glad we agree." "I'm not agreeing. I'm informing you. There's a difference." After dinner, Vanessa cornered me in the hallway. The smooth confidence was gone. In its place was something sharper, an edge of unease that I'd never seen before. "Wait," she said, lowering her voice. "When exactly are you leaving? We need time to adjust." "Sunday, after the gala." Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "What gala?" I'd known this moment would come, and I'd rehearsed my response carefully. Too much detail would give everything away. Too little would seem suspicious. "Just an event with some old friends," I said, keeping my voice light. "Nothing that would interest you." But I saw it, the flicker of calculation in her eyes. Vanessa wasn't stupid. She could sense that something wasn't adding up. "What event? Where?" "Marjorie invited me. You don't know her." "Marjorie who?" I smiled. "Have a good night, Vanessa." I walked to my storage room and closed the door, leaving her standing in the hallway with her questions unanswered. Through the thin walls, I could hear her talking urgently to Marcus. "She's being weird, secretive. Did you know she was moving out?" "She just told us at dinner, honey." "No, I mean, did you know before?" "She said she already signed a lease. That means she's been planning this. And what's this gala she mentioned?" I sat on my cot and smiled in the darkness. She was starting to realize that I wasn't the passive, powerless woman she'd assumed I was, but it was too late for her to do anything about it. In 2 days, she would walk into a room she'd begged to enter and find me standing at the center of it, and she would finally understand exactly who she'd been treating like the help. By Friday morning, Vanessa had put the pieces together, mostly. I was washing breakfast dishes when I heard her gasp from the living room. She was scrolling through Instagram, and I caught a glimpse of what had stopped her: a sponsored post from the Colorado Landscape Architecture Association announcing tomorrow's gala. The hashtag Denver Luxury Landscape glittered above photos from previous years. Crystal chandeliers, elaborate floral arrangements, men in tuxedos, and women in designer gowns. "This is tomorrow night," she said to no one in particular. "The CLAA gala is tomorrow night." I kept my face neutral and continued drying a plate. Vanessa's thumbs moved frantically across her phone. I knew what she was doing, reaching out to every contact she had, trying to secure a last-minute invitation to an event that had already turned her down 4 times. An hour later, I overheard her on a call. "There has to be something. I'll pay for a table. I'll cover someone's ticket. A pause. "A media pass? For Denver Lifestyle magazine?" Another pause. "I can do that. Yes, thank you." She hung up with a triumphant expression. Patricia wandered in from the kitchen. "What's all the excitement about?" "I got in," Vanessa said breathlessly, "to the CLAA gala tomorrow night. I just need to pretend I'm with a magazine." Patricia raised an eyebrow. "Isn't that a bit dishonest?" "It's networking, Mom. Everyone does it." I set the last plate in the dish rack and turned to leave. As I passed them, Patricia smirked. "Why don't you just ask your mother-in-law? She seems to have friends going to these things." Vanessa's laugh was sharp and dismissive. "Mom, Gwen, please. She probably meant a church potluck." If only she had thought to look at the honoree list on the website. My name was right there. Friday night felt like the calm before a storm. I sat in my storage room, surrounded by cardboard boxes half-packed with my belongings. The midnight blue gown hung from the only hook on the wall, catching the light from my small reading lamp. Tomorrow, I would wear it. Tomorrow, everything would change. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. "Grandma?" I opened the door to find David standing there in his pajamas, holding 2 mugs of chamomile tea. "I thought you might want some company," he said. We sat together on my cot, the way we had hundreds of times before, except now there was something different in his expression. He knew I was leaving. He knew things were shifting. "Grandma," he said slowly, "where are you really going tomorrow night?" I took a sip of tea, considering my answer. "Somewhere I should have gone years ago," I finally said. He nodded, as if that made perfect sense. "Is it going to be a big deal?" "It might be." "And Mom doesn't know?" I looked at this boy, this kind, observant boy who had inherited his grandfather's quiet strength and felt a wave of love so fierce it nearly overwhelmed me. "Your mother is going to find out," I said carefully, "tomorrow night, and she may not be happy about it." David was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Good." I almost laughed. "I know I'm supposed to respect her," he continued, "but she treats you like you're invisible. That's not okay." "No," I agreed. "It's not." He reached over and squeezed my hand. "Whatever happens tomorrow, Grandma, I've got your back." I set my alarm for 4 p.m. Hair and makeup at 5. The car would arrive at 6:30, and by 7:15, everything would be different. At 6:15 on Saturday evening, I stepped out of my storage room for the last time as a resident of that house. The midnight blue gown fit perfectly. Michelle at Nordstrom had recommended a seamstress, and the alterations made the dress look like it had been made for me. My hair was swept up in a French twist, something I hadn't worn since Richard's funeral, and the pearl earrings he'd given me for our 30th anniversary caught the light. I walked through the hallway toward the front door. The living room fell silent. Patricia was the first to speak. She'd been mid-sentence, complaining about something on television, but the words died in her throat. She stared at me like I'd materialized from another dimension. "Where on earth are you going dressed like that?" "To an event," I said calmly. "Don't wait up." Vanessa stood up so fast she nearly knocked over her wine glass. She was still in yoga pants and a messy bun, clearly not planning to leave for several more hours. "What event? With who?" Through the window, I saw the black Lincoln Town car pull into the driveway. Right on time. "I'll see you all tomorrow," I said. "Good night." I moved toward the door, but a flash of motion caught my eye. David was running down the stairs, and before I could react, he threw his arms around me in a tight hug. "Go get them, Grandma," he whispered. I kissed the top of his head. "I love you, sweetheart." Then I walked out the door, into the cool evening air, toward the waiting car. Behind me, through the window, I could see Vanessa's face, confused, suspicious, and for the first time in 8 years, uncertain. I didn't explain. I didn't justify. I simply left. The moment my car pulled away, Vanessa began to spiral. I learned the details later, pieced together from David's account and my own observations. But I can imagine the scene clearly. Vanessa pacing the living room, phone in hand, desperately trying to solve the puzzle she'd only just realized existed. "She's going to the CLAA gala," she told Marcus, her voice rising. "She has to be. It's tonight, it's black tie, and she walked out of here looking like that." "So?" Marcus looked bewildered. "Maybe she has friends." "She doesn't have friends. She has us. That's it." But Vanessa had underestimated me, the way she always did. She assumed that a woman who spent her days cooking and cleaning couldn't possibly have connections to the world she so desperately wanted to enter. According to David, she spent the next 20 minutes on her phone, confirming the gala's location and time. Then she called her media contact. "I need that press pass after all. Denver Lifestyle Magazine. Yes, tonight." A pause. "I know it's last minute. I'll owe you." Patricia watched from the couch, bemused. "Vanessa, darling, what are you doing?" "I'm going to that gala." Vanessa was already heading for the stairs. "If Gwen somehow got in, then I need to be there. I need to know how." "But you don't have an invitation?" "I have a press pass. Close enough." Within an hour, she was in her car, wearing the emerald cocktail dress she'd been saving for a special occasion. Her hair hastily curled, and her makeup slightly uneven from rushing. She thought she was going to catch me at something, expose whatever trick I'd used to slip into her dream event. She had no idea she was walking into the Lion's Den. The Crawford Hotel's grand ballroom took my breath away. Crystal chandeliers hung from the vaulted ceiling, casting warm light across 350 guests in black tie and evening gowns. The walls were draped in cream silk, and enormous floral arrangements, white roses, eucalyptus, trailing amaranthus, marked each table. This was Vanessa's dream, and I was standing at the center of it. Marjorie met me just inside the entrance. She looked stunning in a burgundy gown, her silver hair pinned with diamond clips. "Gwen!" She embraced me tightly. "You look absolutely radiant." Before I could respond, a man's voice called out from across the room. "Gwendolyn? Gwendolyn Ortega?" I turned to see Thomas Mercer approaching. Thomas Mercer, CEO of Mercer Development, whose company headquarters I had designed the gardens for back in 2008, a $2.3 million project that had been featured in Architectural Digest. "It is you!" He clasped my hands in both of his. "I haven't seen you in years. Where have you been hiding?" "Just taking some time off," I managed. "Well, you picked a hell of a night to come back." He beamed at me. "Legacy Award recipient. About damn time, if you ask me." Others began to recognize me. Colleagues from my CLAA days, clients whose properties I had transformed, a journalist from Colorado Homes and Lifestyles who had interviewed me in 2011. For 10 minutes, I was surrounded by people who remembered exactly what I was capable of. Then Marjorie took my arm and led me to the front of the room. "Your seat," she said, gesturing to a round table directly before the stage. On the white linen tablecloth, a gold nameplate gleamed. Gwendolyn Ortega, 2024 Legacy Award recipient. I sat down, and I waited. Vanessa arrived at 7:45. I didn't see her enter. My back was to the door. But I felt the shift in the room's energy. Later, I would learn that she'd breezed past security with her Denver Lifestyle magazine press badge, chin high, smile bright, acting like she belonged. She lasted about 10 minutes before the whispers reached her. I was talking with Catherine Wells, an interior designer I'd collaborated with years ago, when I noticed Vanessa making her way through the crowd. She was networking aggressively, introducing herself, handing out business cards, trying to collect contacts like trophies. But the conversations kept trailing off oddly. People would smile politely, then glance toward the front of the room with strange expressions. I watched her corner a young architect and launch into her pitch. "I'm Vanessa Hartley, a lifestyle content creator. I'd love to feature your work on my platforms." The architect blinked. "Sorry, are you related to the Ortega family?" "What? No, She stopped. "Wait, why?" "Just wondering. There's a Gwendolyn Ortega receiving the Legacy Award tonight. I thought maybe—" Vanessa's smile froze. I saw her turn slowly, scanning the room, her eyes moving across the tables until they reached the front, until they found the table with the gold nameplate, until they found me. Our eyes met. I didn't wave. I didn't smile. I simply looked at her, steadily, calmly, while 350 people milled around us, chatting and laughing and having no idea what was unfolding. Vanessa's face had gone very pale, and then the MC stepped up to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please. It is my great honor to present this year's Legacy Award to a woman whose vision has shaped Colorado's most iconic landscapes for 3 decades. The ballroom fell quiet. 350 faces turned toward the stage, champagne flutes pausing midair. Her work graces the grounds of the Mercer corporate headquarters, the Henderson family estate, and the Denver Botanical Gardens Memorial Walk. She has mentored countless young designers and elevated our entire profession through her artistry and integrity." I felt Marjorie squeeze my shoulder. "Please join me in welcoming to the stage Gwendolyn Ortega." The spotlight found me. I rose from my chair as the room erupted in applause. Genuine, sustained, thunderous applause. 350 people on their feet, some of them people I hadn't seen in years, all of them honoring a career I had almost allowed myself to forget. I walked to the stage, each step feeling like a reclamation. The MC handed me the Crystal Award, heavy, substantial, engraved with my name and the date. I approached the microphone. "Thank you," I said, and my voice was steady. "For 30 years I've designed spaces where families could grow, celebrate, and heal. Tonight, I'm reminded that the most important space to design is the one inside yourself, the space where you know your own worth." The applause rose again. I looked out at the crowd, at Thomas Mercer nodding approvingly, at Marjorie dabbing her eyes, at colleagues who remembered me when I was just starting out. And there, at the back of the room, pressed against the wall in her borrowed press badge, was Vanessa. Her face was white, her mouth hung slightly open, her hands clutched her phone like a lifeline. I held her gaze for one long moment, then I nodded, just once, just slightly, and turned back to the audience. Can we just take a second to appreciate that moment? All those years of being overlooked, dismissed, called just the help. And now she's standing on that stage in front of the very people her daughter-in-law was desperate to impress. If you're feeling that catharsis right now, give this video a like. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Now let's see what happens next. After the ceremony, the room reorganized itself around me. People I hadn't seen in decades lined up to shake my hand, to share memories, to ask what projects I was working on now. For 45 minutes, I was the center of a world I had voluntarily exited, and it felt like coming home. Vanessa, meanwhile, was having a very different evening. I caught glimpses of her trying to navigate toward me, but she was repeatedly blocked by the natural flow of congratulators. At one point, I saw a woman in event staff attire approach her with a clipboard. "Excuse me? You're with Denver Lifestyle magazine?" Vanessa nodded, adjusting her press badge. "Could I see your credentials? Our media coordinator doesn't have you on the list." I turned away, but not before I saw the color drain from Vanessa's face. A few minutes later, Marjorie appeared at my elbow. "There's a woman by the press table claiming to be your daughter-in-law," she said, her voice low but amused. "Interesting, since I specifically declined her invitation requests 4 times. "That's her." Marjorie's eyes widened. "That's the one who called you the housekeeper?" I nodded. We both looked toward the back of the room, where Vanessa was now engaged in an increasingly heated discussion with event staff. Her fake press badge had apparently raised flags, and she was trying to talk her way out of it. Marjorie's voice carried just enough to reach nearby guests. "Some people earn their place in this room," she said. "Others try to sneak in. The difference is always obvious." A few people chuckled. Vanessa looked up, caught my eye, and saw that I had witnessed everything. She turned and walked quickly toward the exit, her emerald dress disappearing through the door. She didn't look back. I arrived home at 11:30. The house was lit up, every window glowing, a stark contrast to the usual darkness that greeted me when I returned from errands. The front door was unlocked. Marcus and Vanessa were sitting in the living room, waiting. Patricia had apparently gone to bed. The house was quiet except for the ticking of the wall clock and the sound of my heels on the hardwood floor. Vanessa looked like she'd been crying. Her makeup was smudged, her hair was coming undone, and the emerald dress was wrinkled from her hasty departure. "Why didn't you tell us?" Her voice was raw. "Why did you let me look like a fool?" I set my purse down on the entryway table. The Crystal Award was inside, wrapped in tissue paper. "I didn't make you look like anything, Vanessa. You chose to sneak into an event with a fake press badge. That was your decision." "But you knew how badly I wanted—" "To be in that room?" I finished. "Yes, I knew. And you could have been, if you'd ever thought to ask me who I was instead of assuming I was nobody." Marcus finally spoke. "Mom, we need to talk about the house, about the living situation." "Actually, Marcus, we do need to talk about the house." I kept my voice calm, measured. "Specifically, the $180,000 I contributed in 2016 and the contract I signed with you." Silence. Vanessa's head snapped toward Marcus. "What contract?" I pulled the folder from my purse, the one Bernard had prepared, with the highlighted clause. "Clause 7B, I said. "It guarantees my permanent residency rights. My attorney has reviewed it. Everything is in order." The room went very, very still. I laid the documents on the coffee table. Marcus reached for them with trembling hands. Vanessa stood frozen, her arms crossed over her chest, her face a mask of disbelief. "You had a contract this whole time?" Marcus's voice was barely above a whisper. "Why didn't you ever—" "Use it?" I finished. "Because I loved you. Because I wanted to be here for your children. Because I kept hoping that eventually someone in this house would treat me with the basic respect I deserved." I let that hang in the air before continuing. "I'm moving out tomorrow, not because Vanessa told me to, but because I choose to, on my terms." Vanessa finally found her voice. "Fine, go. We don't need—" "I'm not finished." Something in my tone made her stop. "According to the current market value, $580,000, my 60% contribution entitles me to $348,000. My attorney will send a formal demand letter on Monday. You have 90 days to buy me out, or I retain my rights as co-owner." Marcus's face went gray. Vanessa's mouth opened and closed without sound. "I'm not doing this to punish you," I said quietly. "I'm doing this because I deserve better, and so do my grandchildren. They deserve to see that standing up for yourself is not selfish. From the stairs came a soft sound. I looked up to see David standing on the landing, still in his pajamas, watching everything. "Can I come visit you at your new place, Grandma?" I felt tears prick at my eyes for the first time all evening. "Anytime you want, sweetheart, anytime." The fallout began within 72 hours. Denver's professional circles were smaller than people realized. By Monday afternoon, the story of what happened at the gala had spread through every design firm, real estate office, and social club in the city. The details varied depending on who was telling them, but the core remained consistent. A woman had crashed the CLAA gala with a fake press badge, only to discover that the housekeeper she lived with was actually the Legacy Award recipient. I heard the updates from Marjorie, who seemed to take a quiet satisfaction in delivering them. "Her name is getting around," Marjorie told me over the phone that Tuesday, "and not in the way she wanted. A blogger from the design community posted about it. Didn't name names, but everyone knows." The post, which I eventually saw, read, "Heard someone crashed the CLAA gala with fake media credentials. Turns out she's related to the Legacy Award winner, but had no idea who they were. The irony is too much." Within a week, the consequences began to stack up. 2 brand partnerships Vanessa had been negotiating fell through. One sponsor cited concerns about authenticity. Another simply stopped responding to her emails. Her Instagram following, which she tracked obsessively, dropped by 4,000 in the first 10 days. The comments under her posts had shifted from supportive to questioning. "Didn't you crash some award gala? Why are people saying you didn't know your own family?" Vanessa went silent on social media for 2 weeks. No announcements, no explanation. Just absence. I didn't celebrate her downfall. That wasn't who I was. But I would be lying if I said I felt nothing when I watched the world she'd tried so hard to enter, finally seeing her clearly. Marcus came to see me 2 weeks after I moved into my Cherry Creek condo. He stood in my new doorway, looking smaller than I remembered, shoulders hunched, dark circles under his eyes. For a moment, he reminded me of the boy he'd been at 16, coming home with a failing grade and expecting me to be angry. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside and let him enter. We sat on my new couch, a simple gray sectional I'd picked out myself, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. The afternoon light streamed through the windows, illuminating the space I had created for myself. My drafting table sat by the window. Richard's photo was on the mantel. "I'm sorry, Mom." The words hung between us. "I knew about the contract," he continued, staring at his hands. "I always knew. But I was scared. Vanessa, she has these expectations, and I didn't want to rock the boat, and I just kept thinking if I stayed quiet, everything would work out eventually." "And did it?" He shook his head slowly. "You chose your marriage over your mother," I said quietly. "I understand that. I truly do. But you also let your children watch their grandmother be treated like the help. You let them see that behavior modeled as acceptable." Marcus's eyes filled with tears. "I know, and I don't know how to fix it." "You can't fix the past, Marcus, but you can choose differently going forward." He nodded, wiping his face. "Vanessa's different lately," he said. "Quieter. Her mom left early, went back to Florida. The whole thing with the gala really shook her." "Good," I said. "Sometimes people need to be shaken." He stayed for another hour. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. Bernard sent the formal demand letter on a Monday. Certified mail, return receipt requested, addressed to Marcus James Ortega and Vanessa Marie Hartley Ortega. Inside was a detailed accounting. My original contribution of $180,000 in 2016, the current market value of the property at $580,000 based on comparable sales, and the calculated buyout amount of $348,000. The 90-day clock started ticking. I didn't hear from them directly for 3 weeks. When I finally did, it was a phone call from Marcus. Brief and businesslike. "We're refinancing the mortgage," he said. "The bank approved an additional $180,000 in equity. Combined with our savings, we can make it work." "And the timeline?" "We'll do it in 2 installments, $200,000 within 30 days, the remaining $148,000 within 6 months. Bernard said that was acceptable. It is. There was a pause. Our monthly payment is going up by $1,200, Marcus added. His voice was tight. Vanessa had to cancel some of her content investments. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. They were paying me what I was owed, nothing more, nothing less. The first check arrived 3 weeks later, $200,000, made out to Gwendolyn R. Ortega. I deposited it into my savings account and looked at the balance for a long time. I had given them everything for 8 years. My time, my labor, my dignity. Now I had it back. Not in the form of an apology. I knew better than to expect that. But in something more tangible. Financial independence, a home of my own, and the knowledge that I had stood up for myself when it mattered. 1 month after the gala, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Mrs. Ortega, this is Rebecca Sullivan from Greenridge Design Associates. We're working on a residential project in Boulder, and we wondered if you might be interested in consulting. It was the first of 3 calls that week. Word had apparently spread that Gwendolyn Ortega, the Legacy Award recipient, was available for select projects. The story of my retirement had become the story of my return, and people were curious. I accepted one project, a family garden in Boulder, for a young couple with twin toddlers. They wanted something magical but practical, a space where children could explore safely while parents could entertain. It was exactly the kind of work I'd always loved. The fee was $8,000 for 3 months of consultation. Not a fortune, but it was mine. Meanwhile, Marjorie invited me to join the CLAA's advisory board. No salary, she warned, but plenty of influence. We're revising our mentorship program, and I want your voice at the table. I said yes. The contrast with Vanessa's situation wasn't lost on me. While I was rebuilding my professional presence, she was watching hers crumble. 2 influential lifestyle influencers in the Denver area had quietly unfollowed her, the social media equivalent of being asked to leave the room. Patricia hadn't called her daughter since returning to Florida. According to David, the embarrassment of the gala situation had been too much. Patricia didn't like being associated with failure. I didn't gloat. That wasn't my nature. But I allowed myself to feel what I felt. Satisfaction. Not at Vanessa's suffering, but at the simple, profound justice of being seen. The world she tried so hard to enter hadn't wanted her, but it remembered me. 6 weeks after my move, I established a new rhythm. David came to visit every Saturday. We'd cook together, his request, not mine, and he'd tell me about school, about his friends, about the college programs he was researching. He wanted to study architecture, he said. He wanted to design spaces that made people feel something. I didn't take credit, but I smiled when he said it. The first family dinner I attended at the old house was careful. Marcus picked me up at 5:30. Vanessa greeted me at the door with a stiff, "Hello, Gwen." Not warm, but not hostile either. Progress, perhaps. I made one thing clear before sitting down. "I'm happy to be here," I said to the table, "but I'm here as a guest. I won't be cooking, I won't be cleaning up, and I'll leave when I'm ready to leave." Nobody argued. Vanessa was quieter than I'd ever seen her. She served the food, store-bought but adequate, and asked me polite questions about my condo. There was no warmth in her voice, but there was no contempt either. She was still figuring out how to interact with the woman she'd underestimated for so long. After dinner, Lily climbed into my lap. "Grandma, Mommy says you're a famous gardener." I glanced at Vanessa, who looked away. "I don't know about famous," I said, "but I'm pretty good at making things grow." Later, as Marcus drove me home, he said, "She's trying, Mom. It's hard for her, but she's trying." "I know," I said, "and I'm not asking for an apology. I'm asking for respect. If she can give me that, we can rebuild. If not—" I looked out at the passing streetlights. "I'm fine on my own." The email arrived 3 months after the gala. I was sitting on my balcony, reviewing sketches for the Boulder project, when my phone buzzed. The sender's name made me pause. Vanessa Hartley Ortega. I stared at it for a full minute before opening it. Gwen, I don't know how to say this, so I'm just going to say it. I underestimated you. I was wrong about who you were. I thought I understood how the world worked, and I didn't. I'm not good at apologizing, but I'm trying to be better. Vanessa. That was it. No elaborate justifications, no requests for forgiveness, just 11 sentences of acknowledgement. I didn't reply immediately. I let the email sit in my inbox for 2 days, reading it occasionally, testing how it made me feel. On the third day, I wrote back, Vanessa, thank you for your honesty. I hope you find what you're looking for real this time. Gwen, short, but genuine. A week later, David mentioned that Vanessa had changed her content direction. She's doing less luxury stuff, he said during our Saturday cooking session. More real stuff, I guess, like she posted about how hard it is to start over after a failure. It got more engagement than anything she's done in months. I chopped vegetables and said nothing, but I noticed. That evening, Lily called me from the house phone. Grandma, Mom said you're really smart. Is that true? I laughed. I don't know about smart, sweetheart, but I know what I'm worth. There was a pause, and then Lily's voice, bright and curious. How do you know that? I thought about it. Practice, I said finally. Lots and lots of practice. I'm sitting on my balcony as I tell you this. It's evening in Denver, and the city is spread out before me in a tapestry of lights. The Boulder project is complete. The young family sent me photos of their twins playing in the garden I designed, and I keep those photos on my refrigerator. David was accepted into the architecture program at CU Boulder. He starts in the fall. When I asked him why he chose that path, he said, Because of you, Grandma, because you showed me that you can make spaces where people feel safe. I want to do that too. I cried when he told me. Not sad tears, just the kind that come when you realize your life has meant something. I still go to family dinners occasionally. Vanessa and I will never be close, but we've reached an understanding. She's working on something different now, a brand built on authenticity instead of aspiration. Whether it succeeds, I don't know. But she's trying in her way. The final payment from the buyout arrived last month, $148,000. I put most of it in savings. The rest I donated to the CLAA Scholarship Fund for young designers from underrepresented backgrounds. Richard would have liked that. Here's what I learned, after everything. I spent 8 years keeping quiet because I was afraid. Afraid of losing my grandchildren, afraid of being alone, afraid of making things worse. But silence isn't peace. Silence is just a slow surrender. Boundaries aren't walls, they're doors. You decide who gets to walk through. If you've ever felt invisible in your own home, in your own family, I see you, and I promise, you're worth more than they told you. Now, your turn. What's one boundary you wish you had set sooner? Tell me in the comments. Thank you for staying with me until the end. If this story touched you, please give it a like. It really helps more people find this channel. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button and the bell so you don't miss the next story. There are more stories like this one waiting for you. Check the description for links. Until next time, remember, you are not asking for too much. You are asking for what you deserve.